In this video I'm going to talk about how to crack the diet code. Now, we need to understand that when it comes to diet, when it comes to food, when it comes to fueling our body and nourishing ourselves, no one diet, no one program fits all. And even one program might be appropriate for one period of time, and then after a while it's going to expire and no longer be relevant or effective. So the easiest way to crack the diet code for yourself is to, number one, understand what kind of metabolism you have, whether you're a slow oxidizer or a fast oxidizer. So typically what that means is whether you burn carbohydrates really, as your main fuel source, or whether you burn protein or fat as your main fuel source. Now for me, I know that I'm a protein-fat metabolizer and primarily don't really need that many carbohydrates. But of course we all need some sort of balance of the three, because that's what's allowing us to nourish our body and really fuel ourselves. So an easy way to really figure out what you are is to just pay attention and experiment. And notice how you feel after you eat. Do you feel, tired and irritable and foggy and kind of like all over the place, or do you feel even, balanced, calm, nourished, satiated, and just actually a little bit uplifted and satisfied for a couple hours? Or in 20 minutes, are you hungry? An hour, are you hungry again? And I can tell you from my experience of trying to do, a high-carb vegetarian diet, I could eat a big meal, and then I'd feel kind of bloated and kind of tired, and then an hour later, hour and a half later, I'm hungry again, ready to eat more. And that's because I didn't quite understand that I was a fast oxidizer and I needed fat and protein as my primary fuel source. Now what this means, and why it's important, and why it's important to understand this right now, is that someone who is a fast oxidizer, I should say, and tries to do a vegetarian diet or even a raw vegan diet, is going to run into some trouble, maybe not immediately, but definitely over the medium and the long term. And I can tell you from my experience, definitely is what happened. It's just, you can kind of fool yourself and say, oh, this is a detox, this is a cleansing reaction, this is whatever, but in reality it's just not eating appropriately for your metabolism. And on the converse, someone who is, a slow oxidizer, someone who burns carbohydrates, does really poorly on a high meat diet. So typically what happens in the diet world is someone who's a slow oxidizer and just does really well on carbohydrates comes out and says, hey, everyone should eat this way because I do this, I feel great, and I have 5 clients and they do it and they feel great. So now everyone else should do it because we feel that it's the best, without taking into account, hey, what's your metabolism, what are your goals, what's your lifestyle, how old are you, what are your weaknesses, what are your imbalances, what are your strengths. Without failing to even ask any of those questions, people just make blanket statements and say, hey, I did this for a month or two, I feel great. Or specifically in the raw food thing, people do it for less than a year, 6 months, 3 months, 9 months, whatever it is, and they say, oh, this is the greatest thing ever, I feel amazing, this has saved my life, everyone has to do it, this is the only way it is. And it's like, well, it really hasn't been long enough for us to really, sort this out and come to any kind of clear conclusions. There's not really any data other than just a lot of anecdotal experience in a very short-term kind of thinking, when in reality humans have been eating food for a really long time, and humans have been eating the same kinds of foods for a really long time, and a lot of these new, quote, dietary things are just experiments, and they don't really have the weight of, anthropological, historical data to back them up. So to kind of bypass all of that and really interface with diet in a really pragmatic way, just understand your metabolism and ask yourself how you feel after you eat. If you eat a high protein meal versus a low protein meal versus a medium fat meal, and just experiment with these different things, and don't limit yourself and box yourself in and say, oh, well, I can only eat this kind of food and only eat this because this is what my label says, or this is what this book I read told me is the best thing to do. Just bypass that. Allow yourself to follow your cravings, follow what really makes you feel good and really nourishes you, and ignore what the diet Nazis or the diet dogmatists or whoever is telling you what you should or shouldn't eat. Just ignore that. Understand your metabolism. Understand what makes you feel the best. Experiment and go with that, because only you know that. No one else can tell you how you feel after you eat something or you don't eat something, if you add something in, if you don't add something in. Only you know that. So that's how to really crack the code on the whole diet game, is to understand your metabolism, Pay attention to how you feel when you eat different foods, and start to mix and match and find combinations and ratios of fat, protein, and carbs that work best for you. So, if you have any questions or comments, post them below, and I'll talk to you soon.